One of these days, I will eventually be happy with my camera layout. Today is not that day, unfortunately. I might move chat here. And this is the problem. I've got my mic like right here in front of my. Oh my god, this. I've changed my septum ring. It's making my nose itchy because it's smaller. Sorry, I just got a whiff of gasoline. I don't know where to put. Not anymore. I keep smelling gas. That's weird. I don't know where it's coming from. Not anymore. Okay, good. Thank you for contributing to the Fortnite night. Woo! I hope everybody's having a safe and wonderful day. I hope you all are doing very well. There are a few things to go over. That gas smell is really gonna bother me. It should not be anything in my office because nothing is hooked up to the gas out here. What did I disconnect? What did I do? Oh, the camera. Okay. Okay. No. Okay, we're gonna move this here. You know what? We're just gonna make OBS really big and put this here. Oh. I wish I could put it like under the screen. Like I can put it above. I can put chat above the screen, but I can't put it like below it. If that makes sense. Where'd chat go? There. Okay. If I move my mic here. God, I'm so big. It rained hard earlier. It's just started raining and thundering here. I know a lot of other places are getting it a lot worse. I do want to talk about Texas because I think it's important to discuss those types of things. And I also would really like to talk about Stop Killing Games some more today. I wish it snowed. It's probably never going to snow again. Or if it does, it's going to be like a stupid amount of snow. Like all at once. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Okay, so I want to talk about the Texas floods. As hard as they are going to be, I do think it's important to talk about them. So I'm going to start with what caused.
What if you can create your own website by saying, this is what I want?
I hope the snow becomes radioactive. I don't.
First up, let's talk about.
Thank you so much for joining us for this continuing coverage of the catastrophic July 4th weekend flooding that happened over at the Texas Hill Country. Unfortunately, we do have some numbers where 82 deaths have been confirmed. We do know 48 of those are adults and 27 are children. And still at this hour, there are dozens of people that remain missing. Search and recovery efforts do continue. And we do want to begin with meteorologist Ramisha Shade, because sadly, I know that there's more rain as well on the way. And Ramisha, you were here all weekend long. So you were really here from the beginning, just guiding us through what we could expect in that region. Also here when it comes to that rainfall.
That's right. And days later, I'm still thinking, how is this possible? It's kind of unimaginable, unbelievable. You know, when flash flood warnings, flash flood emergency warnings are issued, that yes, there's the risk of life-threatening flooding, but you never imagine that it's going to lead to so many lives lost. So it's just been a horrific situation. And unfortunately, like you just said, some of the same areas getting hit by heavy rain and flash flooding. Over the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and even today, still flash flood warnings going on north and northwest of the Kerrville area. So it's just a very, very sad situation. So I do want to take you to the graphics and kind of review just what happened, what caused this massive flooding. We actually had a major, quick, rapid rise in that water.
So it says down here, officials received a report of the South Fork at 7 feet Friday a.m. Minutes later, it was up to 29 feet.
With the Guadalupe River. This was early Friday morning. So this was a holiday, by the way, the early morning hours of the 4th of July. Guadalupe River, that North Fork and especially the South Fork, that water rapidly started to rise after the Kerrville area, Comfort, Hunt areas received about 6 to 7 inches of rain late Thursday into Friday. So between 3 to 5 a.m., that water really started to rapidly rise. So the North Fork, the South Fork of the Guadalupe River started to rise, and then they merged around the town of Hunt as the river flows eastward. And there was an official early Friday morning that said the Guadalupe River was right around 7 feet, and then several minutes later it was up to 29 feet. You could see that here, this look at our river flooding map for the Guadalupe River at Hunt. Notice that huge spike early Friday morning, right around 3, 4, 5 a.m., where the river.
I can't believe that camp was built on a dry riverbed. I can't believe Ocean City is built on sand dunes, okay? I'm not surprised. I don't know if you were... I saw aerial photos of pre-flood. Can you send them if you still have the links? I haven't seen much on it, and I haven't really been trying to report on it too much, but I'd love a link or two. Trying to figure out how I want this camera to look. Very interesting. Everything. I was gonna ask if you saw the idiots who lit the Duke on fire. No. The fuck? Why would you do that? If anybody could please answer that question. Can I move chat? There, now when it fishes, it'll go right over my face. Post it in links. Thank you. Click out of it. Great. Where's fishing? Click. Okay, good. Fishing is directly over my face. Perfect. Quality content. Yes! Thank you for understanding the assignment, Dorothy. We're gonna put below the text. Switch the text. We're gonna make chat like half a centimeter small. No. Right. Alright, I think it works. I don't really care anymore. It's got the areas highlighted of what it was. Gonna catch me a good one. I hope she isn't bratty. Okay, I gotta open Discord. Discord. Not going live. Jeez, we're 75% of the way there? Holy shit, guys. Open in browser. Yes. Oh my god. Felix Fisher Road turnoff. Main road here. Oh, 39 Texas. Camp Mystic Guadalupe River. Camp Mystic Guadalupe River. Oh, that's the entrance. Camp Mystic Cypress Lake. Camp Mystic Cypress. Oh, wow. They were like right next to each other. Oh my god. If this is like, is this. So, this river was this whole area right here at one point. Because, like, at least I'm assuming, yes, that is a driver. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, like, if that's the higher point in the river, the two sides are the deepest point. You can see the embankments. Yeah, the shadow right here, right? And, like, right here. You can even see, like, right here, there's a bend where there's not a lot of shrubbery. A lot of that is from the river. Wow. Like the tennis court are dead center of the bottom. Yeah. Wild. This right here gets me too. I wonder how big this original, do you have maps of like what the original river was supposed to look like? It feels fucking awful.
4 o'clock in the east, it's 3 p.m. in central Texas, the site of one of the most devastating and tragic floods in the United States in the past 100 years. At least 90 people have lost their lives. Many others are still missing after catastrophic flash flooding Friday morning along the Guadalupe River. This time-lapse video shows just how quickly the waters rose there, swamping a highway in a matter of minutes. The Guadalupe River rose by 26 feet.
Holy shit.
Are still missing after catastrophic flash flooding Friday morning along the Guadalupe River. This time-lapse video shows.
So that looks like this right here. I could be wrong. I could be mistaken. But where they are looks like right here. I don't think it's over there. There's too much of a road right there. I don't see many other bridges in this way, but it's also hard to tell with those lines. Maybe possibly over here.
Shows just how quickly the waters rose there, swamping a highway in a matter of minutes. The Guadalupe River rose by 26 feet in just 45 minutes, catching countless people by surprise. Here's how some people have described what happened.
Opened the door and the water was up to the door. Ran to my room, grabbed some boots, and came back, and water was coming in the door. I just felt the whole house pick up, and been on a lot of boats, and it felt like I was in a boat.
So I said, we need to get out of the house.
Currently, zoning in Texas is almost non-existent. Yeah, I believe that. I absolutely believe that.
So I grabbed my wife, and we literally jumped in the water, and it swept us down to about 200 feet down that way. And there's a crepe myrtle tree that we grabbed hold of, and we waited for rescue. I literally pulled out my waterproof phone and started calling people going, hey, get Swiftwater Rescue to come get us, because...
Dude was like, you know what? I got a waterproof phone. I'm gonna jump into the water with my wife, and we will survive better that way than whatever is going on here. Oh my... I speculate them being a Christian camp allowed them to skirt what little scrutiny they would get, or just laziness. To be honest, like, who wants to do that paperwork? Everybody's doing favors for everybody. Apparently, the camp counselor also died. But they were like the person who founded the camp, they were in their 70s. So when they founded the camp, it could have been a lot easier too, and then no one's gonna go in there and check it. Yeah, this sucks. This really, really sucks, and I feel awful for the people who are involved in this and the communities that are involved in this. And please, I urge my community to go out and find charities or find ways to help these. But I do feel like a lot of this could have potentially been preventable.
We are like in extremis. We are in bad shape.
We just saw like an ocean out there. It's just like completely destroying everything. We saw like a whole cabin just floating down, and that's when we knew like things were getting actually real out there. Like we were starting to realize that this was a real natural disaster crisis.
As I'm sure you've heard,
The area is nicknamed Flash Flood Alley. Okay, but maybe they thought it was like, you know how Jersey, how we have like the corner of like heaven and hell, or like hope and sadness, hope and despair. Like up in like North Jersey, there's all kinds of roads that intersect that are super ironic. There was a flood there in 87 that also killed 10 kids. Okay, maybe the land is cursed. Maybe the land is cursed. What happens when you build when you build on an entire country of Native American burial grounds?
many of the victims are from Camp Mystic. That's an all-girls Christian summer camp. In a statement, the camp says that 27 girls have been killed in the flood. 10 are still missing. The camp's director died trying to save his campers from the flood. His grandson wrote in a statement this, quote, "If he wasn't going to die of natural causes, this was the only other way, saving the girls that he so loved and cared for. His impact will never leave the lives he touched." Now, the entire region is in the midst of an all-hands-on-deck rescue effort with locals from all walks of life pitching in.
Why are the locals there? I have to ask. Why is it the locals doing this? Where is FEMA? Where are the rescues? Both co-owners are dead. So many lawsuits ain't gonna go anywhere. Oh, it's so awful. I wouldn't even say lawsuits. Any kind of reparations from the government, help, rebuilding infrastructure. They're not gonna get it. This entire area is gonna suffer for it. They're not gonna have any conclusion to it. And who would you even sue? The government? Good luck.
I've got 2 babies at home. It's the least I could do. They're home safe, and there's people out there that they're missing their children or their family members. So I feel like it's the least I could do to help.
Being able to find the remains and perhaps let their families know some clarity on what exactly happened for sure. I know if I was in that situation myself, it would bring me some closure knowing definitively what happened instead of continuously holding out, wondering if the one I love is still out there.
Today, much of the area remains under a flood watch again, with 2 to 4 inches of rain possible, up to 10 inches in some places, as locals and first responders face harrowing conditions. Questions are also swirling, though, about the initial response. Texas officials initially blamed the National Weather Service for failing to predict the amount of rainfall. On that, NBC News reports this, quote, "Independent meteorologists and a former NWS official said warnings issued in the run-up to the flooding were about as timely and accurate as could be expected with the weather data available in real time."
Oh, I can't believe they're attacking the very things that were helping people. I don't understand. I don't understand. Oh, more pictures. Thank you. Browser. All right. So, oh, this is from the 87. Oh, wow. So, Guadalupe River, bus stall and van trapped. Secondary channel where flood wave came through. Campground. Wilson. Nothing else is marked on here. This is so frustrating. Peak depth of the river during the flood. Road to campgrounds. Approximate location of where the bus stalled and the van became trapped. Oh my god. That's horrific. No. They're gonna hurt themselves in their confusion, for real. Like, it's so frustrating. Like, you know why this happened. Okay, I can see chat, I can see this, I can see part of my screen. Fishing is working.
Hold on to your butt.
Oh, that's sad. That sounds too quiet.
However, the New York Times reports this, quote, crucial positions at the local offices of the National Weather Service were unfilled as severe rainfall inundated parts of central Texas on Friday morning, prompting some experts to question whether staffing shortages made it harder for the forecasting agency to coordinate with local emergency managers as floodwaters rose. Compounding the issue, what looked like a shrug from Donald Trump when he was confronted with questions about the possibility that the federal government fell short in warning Texas residents and that his administration's gutting of federal agencies might hamper efforts to respond to emergencies like this one. Watch that.
President, are you still planning to phase out FEMA?
Well, FEMA is something we can talk about later. But right now they're busy working, so we'll leave it at that. Go ahead.
Are you investigating whether some of the cuts to the federal government left key vacancies at the National Weather Service or in the emergency coordination?
No, they did not. They did. I'll tell you, if you look at that, what a situation that all is, and that was really the Biden setup. That was not our setup, but I wouldn't blame Biden for it either. I would just say this is a 100-year catastrophe. And it's just so horrible to watch.
That's right.
A 100-year catastrophe that happened like 40 years ago. Sorry, what?
We start today with Texas State Senator Roland Gutierrez, his district neighbors that of Kerr County. Also joining us, MSNBC senior political analyst, Texas resident through and through, Matthew Dowd is here. But we're going to start with...
I feel like this is going to be the same shit that happens with like gun violence. Like, you know how every time there's a shooting, especially when there's a school shooting, the first thing they do is go, too many people died, we can't politicize it, right? And then the next thing they do is they go, well, we need to give thoughts and prayers. And maybe we'll think about doing some legislation, but this was really terrible. And then nothing happens, and then more laws get passed that hurt people. People get hurt. Thoughts and prayers are given. Rinse, repeat until everyone is dead. Like, that's how it feels. Like, this should not have happened, and this could have been potentially decently avoidable, especially if like risk and concerns were taken seriously. If a place is flooded before and they have gotten a flood warning, potentially it might be a good idea to listen to that warning. But there are reports coming out that they didn't even get that warning. So it's very frustrating because this could have been preventable. There's a lot of things that could have been preventable about this, not just the Weather Service, but making sure the codes were up to date. So this is just awful. And I feel like nothing's going to get done about it. We're going to keep having these once-in-a-lifetime storms and these once-in-a-lifetime natural disasters, and nothing is going to change. And I know that's like my emotional permanence, but also like, what has happened? What has happened to stop any of these tragedies from happening?
My colleague, NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler in Kerrville, Texas. Ryan, take us through what's happening right now.
Well, people hold on to hope here. It is still an active search and rescue operation. Officials say they're still in the primary phase of this search. Now 4 days after so many people tragically lost their lives, they're still looking for any signs of life, but increasingly likely it seems they're trying to recover bodies. The number of missing people has gone down as the death toll rises to 90 now. It's just unbelievable to look out at the destruction that this river left. People here have an incredible amount of anguish and anxiety. Families want more answers about what happened to their loved ones, but they almost fear those because with every update, we learn of more death. I want to say, too, there are a lot of officials in town today. I met with Senator Ted Cruz to ask him on some of the very important questions that you raised, Nicole. I asked Senator
I'm surprised you didn't have to go to Cancun to get a hold of Cruz.
Cruz if he would support eliminating FEMA like President Trump has suggested. He said no. FEMA serves a very important function, and while he would consider maybe restructuring it, he would not support eliminating FEMA. I asked the senator as well about the National Weather Service staffing cuts and the DOGE funding cuts and whether he has concerns about the service being able to do its job. He said no. He trusts the service to provide timely updates and do their job the best they can with the resources they have. But we are continuing to press officials about what went so wrong here, why people did not understand the threat that was coming. Yes, warnings were issued, but nobody here expected the catastrophe that was downriver. Trying to press them on why that happened.
It's very interesting because there's a couple of like historical events, and I forget where one of them was. Basically, it was like 2 back-to-back natural disasters. Potentially, it was like maybe volcanic eruption, but I could be wrong. From what I remember, there was some kind of natural disaster that was happening somewhere, and it happened, and then there was no information left about it, and it wasn't like written down or anything like that, and the people just like recovered and moved on with their lives. And then I think it was like 7 years later, or it might have been more than 7 years later. It might have been like 20 years later. Because there was no like written record of what happened. I think it was a tsunami. Because there's no written record of this information from what happened to the last tsunami, when the same place got hit again with a tsunami, and again, I vaguely remember it being a tsunami, but I could be totally wrong. They didn't know what to do or like how to move on from there. So I think it is really important that like people in their minds and in their education learn about our past, because then it could prevent bad things from happening again in the future.
And what the solution is now on a policy level, Nicole.
Ryan, just for folks who maybe were following this, on their phones while they were with family over the holiday weekend, can you take us through the timeline that's been assembled by local officials you've been talking to? Can you tell us exactly what you understand happened?
I think that is most fully understood by a woman that, I'll tell you, this conversation I had with a woman just now who said on Thursday evening, as the sun was going down, the 4th of July party was set up ready to go in the public park here. Yes, there were warnings. TDEM, the Texas Department of Emergency Management, said that there may be flash flooding, and they pre-positioned some resources Thursday. Yes, the National Weather Service issued a forecast that was underestimated and warnings of possible flash flooding, but it was life as normal here in Kerrville, people expecting to celebrate with fireworks on Friday.
So it says on here, it says Thursday morning, flood hazard outlook expanded. 8:47 a.m. Central Time. Texas Division of Emergency Management posts flood guidance on X. 1:18 p.m. Central Time. Flood watch in effect through Friday morning. 11:06 p.m. Central Time. San Angelino flash flood warning. 11:41 p.m. Bandera County flash flood warning.
Friday, having no idea the extent of what was coming downriver, having no idea that 60 plus people just in this county would die that night. It's just a tragic timeline of shock and surprise. We know the National Weather Service issued an urgent alert, blaring phones in the middle of the night around 1 a.m. Friday.
Friday, 1:14 a.m. Central Time. Considerable flash flood warning for Bandera Kerr triggers wireless emergency alert. So people's phones start going off. 4:03 a.m. Flash flood warning upgraded to flash flood emergency for Kerr. 4:13 a.m. San Angelino flash flood warning upgraded to catastrophic. 4:35 a.m. First reports of Kerr officials of flooding at low waters. 5 a.m. First flash flood local storm report in San Angelino. 4:34 a.m. Flash flood emergency issued for Guadalupe River.
But a lot of people here say they either didn't hear it, they were asleep, or those warnings went unheeded. A lot of questions still left to answer, Nicole, honestly, about the timeline and what could have been done differently.
And Ryan, while we have you, just tell us about Camp Mystic, what your reporting tells you about that place, a very special place, and obviously parents and even non-parents, hearts break for everyone involved in the Mystic Camp family.
Camp Mystic is a very special place, not just here in Kerrville, but for people across the state. It's been incredible to hear from family and friends back in Dallas, Houston, Austin. It seems like everybody knows somebody who is impacted by this, because Camp Mystic is such a feature of so many people's lives in Texas. It was run by two amazing people, the Eastlands, Dickie and Tweety. Everybody here in Kerrville seems to have known them, not just known of them, but loved them. They say Dickie died trying to save those girls, and while they are shocked this happened, they're not surprised by the way that he died trying to save these girls that he loved so much. Just a real hole in the heart of this community here when we see what happened at Camp Mystic.
Matt Dowd, let me bring you in on this, and let me just pull back the curtain. Our last conversation about your next appearance on this show was about a piece you wrote about trauma. And now you are in the middle of the state you love, with neighbors you love, suffering this extraordinary heartbreak. What are your thoughts today?
Well, I'm glad to be here to talk about this. And I'd just like to put some context to follow something with what Ryan said. I mean, this is incredibly tragic, incredibly sad. All of us know this who visited this area, spent time on the Guadalupe, I've spent a lot of time in Center Point. I had a cabin on the Guadalupe and understand the flood risk that exists there. But these camps, and especially a place like Camp Mystic, just so people understand, this is a tradition that everyone in Texas, Central Texas, Houston, Dallas knows of these kids spending time, boys and girls, on these camps. And this camp in specifically, I've talked to people whose grandmothers went to this camp, whose mothers went to this camp, and then their daughters have gone to this camp. And so this is a tradition that's of Texas. It's now been completely shattered in a very traumatic way in this. I so disagree with this idea of like, oh, there's no way to know this thing was going to come. There was no way to know, this was going to happen. It was as Donald Trump has said, it's a 100-year event. How would we know? This is flash flood alley. As the senator, I'm sure we'll talk about, this is something that we know about, that we should have been prepared for, that we should have been doing something about for decades and decades and decades, locally and at the state level and at the federal level. The fact that we didn't, and now we're sort of dealing with this immense tragedy, is so incredibly disturbing in this, because this was, in my view, the tragedy of this and the extent of the tragedy of this was totally preventable.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely could have been. This could have been preventable, but here we go.
Wix. One platform, any website.
Get out of here,
Unlimited
Wix.
creation.
So, Tony, tell me about why so many people, what's the going theory right now about why?
I can't believe there was a volcano in Go Fuck Yourself. I'm an active volcano estates. I still feel bad. A lot of people died. I'm sorry you all to just stare at my armpit. It is very it's accurate what you're saying.
Why so many people?
How could you say something so true yet so controversial? Usually gotta pay double for that. At least a tip. Subscribe. Like, share, subscribe. For $6. What's I don't know what a Twitch subscription is more. I keep getting notifications. It's like, we're increasing Twitch prices. I'm like, please stop. Everyone is poor. So you could also do it for free with an Amazon Prime.
People did not move when
The
they
most embarrassing part is that I haven't shaved in like 2 days, so it's not even like full length cute or like short and clean. It's like the in between 5 o'clock shadow of armpits.
got that alert. Is it that a lot of them just didn't get it? Why were there so many people that ended up getting swept away by these floodwaters?
And Katie, that's one of the things that we are really trying to determine and have been trying to determine since this tragedy struck. There are a number of different factors that are in play
Doodle
here.
just subscribed with Prime.
Thank you for the resubscription, excuse me. 2 months. I feel like it's been longer than that. I think Tim's at like 29 months. What do you want me to say? Ooh, ooh. Oh, hold on, wait. I think I got it. Thanks for being a subscriber, Dorothy. Ooh, ooh. That could have been better. It could have been better. Ooh, ooh. Months. Ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh. One of these days I'll get it.
May not be one single answer that speaks to all of the factors at play. But number one, we are being told by officials in Kerr County and people who were there when this flash flood struck, and that is potentially they may have been in an area that did not have cell phone reception. Keep in mind, this is a deeply rural area with a lot of rolling hills that may impact the ability for people to receive those alerts on their phone. But at the same time, officials and experts who work in emergency management also note that people potentially could have or should have had NOAA weather radios and whether or not those radios were turned on. And
I feel like what would have really helped potentially would be sirens. Sirens would probably be a good idea.
I think in the weeks and the months to come, there's going to be a lot of attention on camp operators and what they may have known or what plans they may have had in place to evacuate their properties or to move campers to higher ground for situations exactly like this.
Yeah, the good thing about those NOAA radios, and I just discussed this with a former NOAA official and a guy at the National Severe Storms Lab, they just turn on. If you have them programmed to the frequency in your area, they just turn on automatically once that button is pushed at headquarters saying that there is a flash flood or there's a warning, a get out now alert in your area. So they are very effective. And they were, by the way, developed in the aftermath of a giant flood there in the 80s.
Oh.
Richard, I know you can speak.
Maybe a little bit more should have done. Maybe.
Speak to that better than I can. You were the 11th administrator of NOAA. When you were looking at this, and if you were still in charge, what would you be advising?
Yeah, heartbreaking as this is, I think it's pretty clear that these loss of life and the damaged property, a lot of it was ultimately preventable. And it has to do with the fact that the Weather Service did their job. They put the watches and warnings out that you heard about with 3 to 4 hours of lead time prior to the very severe flooding. But at the end of the day, it's about what.
Oh shit, I might be in first again. Hold on, I gotta check the board. Eat it, Hobby. Damn it! Just under 100. Or just over 100. Red, what the fuck? Red, do something. I was gonna say, Tim's not here, so good luck.
What we call the last mile. So the message goes out, the warning goes out using language like considerable and catastrophic impact. But if the emergency managers, the people with responsibility for evacuating people, or at the very least notifying those who are going to be impacted, don't get the message, don't know how to respond, then you're going to have the kind of loss of life that we saw here. And quite honestly, one of the biggest challenges is that with an understaffed National Weather Service, some of the abilities to connect with the emergency management community have probably been compromised of late.
There's also an issue of trust. Have you seen a degradation of trust between people getting these alerts, Richard, and heeding these alerts?
I think a lot of times people feel like, well, I've had a false alarm in the past, I won't necessarily respond. But the key there is to make sure that we're getting information to folks that are trusted by local communities. So emergency managers and personnel who are part of the community are usually well trusted. So the connection between the National Weather Service and those emergency managers is critical to get past that inherent distrust about whether I need to evacuate or I should prepare for some major outcome.
So there are a lot of critiques right now and questions, and Democrats are calling for investigations into the Trump administration over the cuts that DOGE made to the National Weather Service, to NOAA, the ability to forecast and predict and then respond.
Also, like, the people that could be helping them right now, the National Guard, are currently out in LA helping with arresting US citizens. And like regular people just trying to do work. So that's where these tax dollars are going. And that's where all your help is going. It's all out rounding up immigrants instead of actually helping people at home.
On to these sorts of disasters, Peter, but there's also now questions about whether cutting FEMA is a good idea. Donald Trump wants to get rid of FEMA after this next hurricane season, and I read that op-ed in the New York.
Hurricane season doesn't end anymore. It goes from like June 1st to like November 31st. Like it never ends anymore. It's insane. You're gonna cut freaking FEMA like funding after hurricane season? That's just stupid.
New York Times from a former official over there laying out that you can't just get rid of it and leave it to the governors. It's not so easy as saying, hey, governors, take up this responsibility. NOAA recorded 27 events last year that cost the U.S. economy at least $1 billion. $1 billion. And to put that on the heads of individual states, which, by the way, have to balance their budgets and have to account for all sorts of other things, and then have those states then wait for federal funding later to come if it does, it's pretty difficult. I wonder if anyone in the administration is reconsidering that today.
What bothers me the most about this plan is they want to dump everything back to the states or privatize it. That's really annoying. But the second most annoying part is that they want to bitch and moan and try to control every single state, but they're not giving the states anything but a hard time. So why should the states capitulate? Make it make sense. Like, what if you're not going to give me my funding no matter what I do? If you're going to say that I can't do this and my citizens can't do that, and my citizens can't do this, and my citizens have to agree to this, and you're not giving us anything, why should I listen? States' rights. I'm just saying. They used to be a bigger thing. I thought people gave a fuck about independence, but apparently not anymore.
Yeah, it's a good question, Katie. I've been covering the White House now since the 90s. 5 presidents. I've traveled with all of them to disaster sites around the country, tornadoes, hurricanes, flash floods, wildfires, you name it. And every time a president lands in one of these disaster zones, what the governors tell...
Wait, time out. Please fix your bookcase. Please. They want to eat daddy's boot as it steps on them. It seems so hard to do. Like, listen, when you're on your back and people are trying to put things on your chest and in your mouth at the same time, it's not the easiest task, and it's not the most attractive when you have 18 chins. Okay? just saying. You don't even do anything.
Every time a president lands in one of these disaster zones, what the governors tell him is they want more FEMA, not less, more FEMA, right? And this is Republican governors and Democratic governors. I've never heard a governor tell any president who was visiting a site of a national disaster, I want the federal government to do less. Now, they wanted to do better, no question about it. There are critiques of FEMA and how it has run things, as the op-ed talked about. There are people who have ideas for how it could be reformed and made more efficient. But the idea that they're going to pull back altogether seems a curious one, because I don't see a demand for that among the states. I don't hear a rising call from the states saying, hey, get rid of FEMA, let's not do this. And by the way, this is, again, bipartisan. When disasters happen, the first people in Congress to put in for money to help communities that have been hurt are Republicans as well as Democrats. You don't see any Republicans saying back, hey, don't give money to my community after you've had a terrible disaster. No, of course, they say the federal government has to step in because, in fact, it often is beyond the capacity.
This is just awful. My heart goes out to this area. I do think better things could have been put in place. But I think the biggest takeaway is that this will keep happening. That things like this will keep happening, and people need to be aware because our government doesn't give a fuck. All right. God damn it, I just remembered I need to get that noise, that sound. Can post links in chat. Take it to the Discord, buddy. Maybe I should make a section in the Discord that just says, like, clips. I'll do that another time. Bitchy.
Switching side.
Switching sides.
Switching sides.
Need this. Okay, hold on. Let me. Yesterday, when I went to their account, I found, like, people's accounts, I found more stuff that was, like, better. Okay, this person's got great fucking... Can I follow them? This is... Their shit's fantastic. They got Nikocado avocado. They got the...
This kid's definitely on crack right now.
So many good sounds. Well, I couldn't find the sound I wanted. But I do want to move on because there's another Stop Killing Games update. Because more information was posted last night after I got off stream. / today, depending on a few things. Yeah. Yep, LOL. Oh, there we go.
This is Wix Studio, built to meet any brief. When your project calls for bold creativity,
that's the first thing.
Can't wait to watch it. Terrible. Okay, I made a new channel in the Discord. It's called Clips. It's under Charlie One. I should probably clean this up, but okay. Anyway, I do not have permission to post it in Clips. Ew. I don't think I let anybody do anything. Oh, okay. So, how do I set it back to... Alright, send message. Embedded link, patch file, external sticker, read messages, save. Okay, try now. It's because it took the stuff from the category rather than just letting anybody do it. I fixed it. Okay, yeah, so I'm not saying now. Okay. Anyway, so there's been a little bit of an update on since yesterday. I did watch a little video yesterday from Accursed Farms, who is the front and face and man behind Stop Killing Games. They both basically updated that, like, yes, we did reach the 1 million signatures, but a lot of them might not be legit, or some of them might be from other countries or what have you. So please, if you're in the UK or the EU, please continue to sign the petition that they need. Links are in the video that I just posted, or you can go to Stop Killing Games. Where is it? StopKillingGames.com.
Hello, I have a development on the Stop Killing Games campaign. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's recently crossed the 1 million signature mark, though I'm assuming nothing. In fact, I've been given stats that there was a previous initiative that had 250,000 of its signatures invalidated, and I could see us setting a new record there. So keep signing, that's the first thing. Second, for anyone who doubts how powerful this initiative can be, we now have a lobbying group issuing a statement about us. Do you think if we had no chance of changing things, we would have lobbyists coming out against us?
Oh, I think I saw this.
Well, a big one is Video Games Europe. Best I can tell, this is essentially the voice of the industry. So of course they're going to be against any proposal we make, because they're ideologically opposed to us being able to retain our games. I really can't emphasize that enough. Even if every developer in the world was for our proposal, the industry would still be against it. Because it's not developers who make most of the big decisions. It's shareholders and companies worth billions.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, let's go through this statement quick by our opposition here. We appreciate the passion of our community. However, the decision to discontinue online services is multifaceted, never taken lightly, and must be an option for companies when an online experience is no longer commercially viable. Well, I have great news for you, Video Games Europe. We are in no way seeking to impede your right to discontinue online.
Yeah, he covers all of that in the fucking. It's all in the paperwork. It's every little bit, every FAQ. Oh my god, Ross did such a good job of organizing shit in a way that people could understand it. And these bitches still can't read. Make it make sense.
Online services. We are saying you can shut down your games whenever you want. But you have to do that responsibly, in a way that doesn't take back rights you already sold to customers. Yeah, some people forget that companies have to sell you some rights to begin with to even play the games. We understand that it can be disappointing for players, but when it does happen, the industry ensures that players are given fair notice of the prospective changes in compliance with local consumer protection laws. Okay, well, first off, I'm not a lawyer, but this guy at WBS Legal is, and he thinks Ubisoft probably broke the law when it shut down the crew, giving players only 3 months' notice, when they should have given more like 2 years. Yeah, you know, Ubisoft, one of your members. So this is probably a false statement out the gate.
Get him! Oh my god. This is somebody who... I really like Ross because he does his research, but he also shows his work. You know? Like, he is not somebody who is afraid to give you every single answer you have a question to. And I really appreciate that.
But you know what? That's not even our issue. So I don't even care how much notice you're giving to players. What I care about is that you're not depriving them of their purchase. Private servers are not always a viable alternative option for players, as the protections we put in place to secure players' data, remove illegal content, and combat unsafe community content would not exist and would leave rights holders liable. Okay, several things here. We have to break it down. Private servers are not always a viable alternative option. So they're saying for a new game concept, which hasn't even been made yet, sometimes there is no way they can add an end-of-life plan to the design? Their programmers' fingers simply can't type that? I would love to see them say this to a room full of developers. I think the industry would be surprised how viable it was if the law said you can't take back the limited license rights you already sold to the customer. And this next part. Yes, this part is true. Players will absolutely be getting a rougher and more wild experience playing an unsupported game. I happen to know a thing or two about that. So yes, that's the nature of anything unsupported. That's not a good excuse to destroy what people paid for.
Yeah.
It just means they're on their own. But then they say this part. It would leave rights holders liable. Okay, I am not a lawyer, but my first impression is this strikes me as very not true. The way I read this, they're saying they are incapable of writing an end-user license agreement that absolves them of all liability on shutdown. Like planning for end of life, apparently it's just not possible.
Yeah.
So me, as a layman, I'm wondering what's the problem with adding a line like this to the EULA? Once our company ends support, we are not responsible for any and all issues that arise from users continuing to operate the game in a discontinued and unsupported state, and absolve ourselves from any and all liability pertaining to its continued use. There's probably a better way to say that, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
They seem to be saying a line like that is just impossible to write. See, I'm puzzled by this because as a consumer, I've seen all kinds of things have support end, but I still get to keep them? I'm just on my own. That's a very common thing. I think we need a lawyer to weigh in on this. So if we take them at their word, it sounds like they're concerned about protecting customers. Okay, But their solution is customers must have their purchase taken away from them forever. We have to destroy our customers' games to protect them from themselves. I normally don't like to use this phrase because it's thrown around too much, but this is beyond nanny state.
Oh my god, did Pirate Software write this? Did Pirate Software be like, yo, let me work with this lobby group. I will write this. I am part of this lobby group. These are all the exact same points he made. Like, all of them. Did he write this? Oh, I'm clicking on the wrong thing.
State. This is more like Terminator state. Take a game like Star Siege Tribes. For all purposes, that's a game intended to run online with other people, or over a network at the very least. It was discontinued in 2004, but you can still run it today, online. This lobbying group seems to be saying that's a liability. No one should have been permitted to run this game after 2004, and it's a mistake that this game is still allowed to exist because of the risk to consumers. We would have destroyed every last copy of it back in 2004 if we could have. We couldn't then, but we can now. So that's our business model with new games. See, I take that as extremely hostile to both customers and preservation.
Yeah.
So my question is, why can't we allow customers to continue playing the game, but adding a splash screen saying something like, warning, this game is no longer supported. Running it could represent a risk to your security. We assume no liability for what may happen as a result. That strikes me as a reasonable compromise. In addition, many titles are designed from the ground up to be online only. In effect, these proposals would curtail developer choice by making these video games.
This is like almost verbatim exactly what Pirate Software was saying. Like, oh my god, I feel like you wrote this.
Prohibitively expensive to create. Okay, this part is a little more complicated because every game is different. But when I see this, I'm thinking of auto manufacturers saying how they can't afford to make cars if they're required to include seatbelts in them. Because no one ever made that argument back in the 60s. However, I think there is a big piece being left out of the discussion here. A whole lot of the complexity and cost of making an online game comes from all the microservices involved. And guess what? We don't need the vast majority of them for an end-of-life build. I talked to a developer and he gave me a big list of examples we don't need. Payment processing, anti-cheat, analytics, voice chat. There's so much here that's not necessary to just run the damn game. In fact, I have a quote from him. We are not asking for 98% of the game. We're asking for the 2% of game logic from main gameplay functionality. Except even that's not true. We're not asking for that directly. We're asking for the same rights we already bought for the game, which they can probably fulfill by providing that 2%, as he puts it. So let's cut out all this extra crap before we start talking about how cost prohibitive an end-of-life build is. Now, that does mean designing games so it's easier to turn off all these microservices is a very good idea. And that also means it may not be practical for some existing games. Good thing for the industry, the initiative is not retroactive. And most publishers already have a local test environment for a game, which I'm told is bad practice not to. That's half the battle right there. So this statement? No, this one is meme level. I do not believe the industry when they say this is so expensive it's not possible, especially when it's been done many times before. This is seatbelts all over again. And how about getting input from big European developers not on this list, like CD Projekt or Larian? We welcome the opportunity to discuss our position with policymakers. Yeah, I bet you do. And those who have led the European citizen.
Somebody should tell Sven about this. I feel like Sven would be all over this. Sven is, I think, the face of Larian Studios. He is all over the information. Shout out to any member of Baldur's Gate. Great game, 10 out of 10. Still haven't finished it. Getting there. I just completed all of Emerald Grove's done. The Underdark is done. Every little bit of it, including Grimforge. But I didn't go up to the Shadow Curse lands from the Grimforge. I'm going back to Githyanki Crash and finishing that all up at the Temple of Lathander. That's where I'm at right now. Once I'm done all that, I should be able to go to the Shadow Curse lands, but I'll probably do like equip the lap. Just to make sure. Like I got all the magical artifacts. That's actually the biggest thing. Magical artifacts.
Citizens Initiative in the coming months. Well, they'll probably be glad to know that's actually not me. I am not the official spokesperson for the initiative. I'm ineligible. I'm more of a super promoter. The reason I'm making this video is I want to inoculate people against these bad faith arguments. Remember, everything they're saying here is their excuse for taking away your purchase with no time frame given and destroying it forever. Is this a good enough excuse for you?
No.
It isn't for me, especially when they're lying. I think that's worth taking into consideration. And on that note, they also released a longer statement. But do I really need to go over this? Why providing continued support do not work for all games. Or back to the classics. Okay, so they don't even understand what we're asking for. You know what?
It should be
I'm gonna
does
let them
not.
figure
I feel like it should be does not support, right? Why providing continued support do not work for all games? I feel like why providing support does not work for all games.
it out. I've played that song enough already. If I have to explain that a 500th time, I want it to at least be to someone who's not being paid to undermine us. Now, they're going to be lobbying politicians with this, I'm assuming, but we can try and do our part too. If you're super motivated on this and are part of the EU, you can contact a member of European Parliament and tell them about the initiative. I've been told you should target ones in the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee. There's a link in the description below. Just pick one for your country, and I'm just relaying this next part. I have no idea myself, but I've been told you should maybe avoid PFE and ESN, as they're not known for doing things, is how it was explained to me. And the last bit of advice is a lot of email to them gets buried. So if you want something that stands out, this title was suggested to me. 1 million plus sign European Citizens Initiative. Stop destroying video games. Help us protect gamers' consumer rights. And that's all I have on Video Games Europe lobbying against us. For now, I guess. A quick update to the last video. I didn't mean to scare the hell out of everyone signing. If you made an honest mistake filling out the initiative, it won't count, but don't worry.
I'm not a lawyer, but for honest mistakes, I think there would most likely be no penalty or a small fine at work.
I don't think you'll be in any trouble with the law. Just don't spoof fake signatures. That's the part that's a big deal. Also, don't sign if you're not voting age. I've said this before, but it's been a while. There's always 50 things to cover. Finally, if you have made a mistake, you might be able to get it corrected. Get in touch with the official spokesperson, Daniel. His info is on the initiative page. All right, that's it. Keep signing to make sure this happens.
Good job, Ross. Proud of you. Doing great, kid. I gotta shut that door in a minute. I'm starting to get cold. So that's like the latest update with Stop Killing Games. I haven't seen much else come out about it. Other than people like constantly dunking on Pirate. I do restroom. So I want to watch this next. I'm gonna put music on, and then we're gonna watch this Pirate Software video about him being a a 5-minute. This just works.
and my friends get no respect. What does Scooby do that we neglect? We be putting all our foes in check, but me and my friends get no.
Oh my god, because Patrick Stump is from Chicago. He's a hardcore Chicago boy. He has like 4 songs about the city of Chicago, one from his own personal album, and one called Chicago Is So 2 Years Ago. Like, it was very beautiful to I love that My Chemical Romance makes it into this song. Oh, I fucked it up. not be chugging that soda. I don't even want water.
Elon Musk, Kaepernick, Texas failed electric grid, Jeff Bezos, climate change, White Rhino goes extinct, Great Pacific garbage patch, Tom DeLonge and aliens, Mars rover, Avatar, self-driving electric cars,
SSRI, Prince and the Queen drive, World Trade, second plane. What else do I have to say? The only verse I have down. I love it so much. I was literally getting ready to go to bed last night. And I'm just like, SSRI's Prince and the Queen died. World Trade, second plane. What else do I have to say? We're like undoing the bed. Like we're making the bed for bedtime. And I'm just over here going off about the World Trade. Anyway, I just had to get through that.
Wix gives you the freedom to tell your story with a professional website that reflects who you are and what you have to offer.
So I was so triggered I had to come out of my slumber to make a video on pirate.
Okay, never mind. I thought this was gonna be like an actual breakdown. I love Northern Lions so much. I did see there's a little bit of an update. Hold on. To Texas. I do want to cover that. It is nice to see Florida is now apparently sending people to go help. Why is my mic? There it is. I was like, why is my mic not picking?
This afternoon, hundreds of first responders from across the state are in the Hill Country, and the search for survivors taking an emotional toll. As you can see here, a sheriff's deputy needing a moment as he combs through the debris on the banks of the river near Camp Mystic.
Fire crews from our area among the teams working around the clock doing different tasks. Our Troy Klesch speaking with some of those on the ground in Kirk County. Troy, what are they experiencing?
Well, Marcelino, they're experiencing what many of those other first responders are seeing, just a lot of devastation right now. So according to some of the crews that I spoke with, they say that they expect to be in the Hill Country or in parts of central Texas for weeks. Now, they say that they are getting assignments from state leaders while assisting the local.
There's nothing more American than PBS. It's a safe place where kids learn and grow, and where grown-ups are informed, entertained, and inspired. PBS is one of America's greatest resources for 50 years strong, and PBS needs your help to keep going for another 50.
We will have done a great service.
For our future. Visit Protect My Public Media to learn more, because there's nothing more American than PBS.
Welcome to the News Hour. Hopes are dimming for finding survivors from the flash floods that devastated central Texas on July 4th. At least 95 people were killed in some of the deadliest floods to hit this country in decades. That includes 28 children. More than 850 people have been rescued since the floods first hit, but dozens are still unaccounted for, including at least 10 young girls. William Brangham begins our coverage with this report.
Days after the deluge, the Guadalupe River was quiet today. But the damage it wrought over the weekend is visible everywhere. What once were entire campgrounds along its banks, gone. Locals are still coming to grips with the terror they experienced.
There was a little boy who started floating downstream,
and he was screaming, asking for help. I was about to jump in, and my husband had to hold me back. He said, "You're going to go too, and there's nothing you can do if you jump in." I didn't know how I was going to live with that. And thankfully, by the end of the day yesterday, I saw his face online, and he had been rescued.
Oh, thank God.
Officials this morning said the huge search for other survivors is still underway.
This is a massive field that is happening. And again, this is unprecedented flood events. So we are still currently in the primary search phase.
This will be a rough week. Primary search continues, and we remain hopeful every foot, every mile, every bend of the river.
Through the weekend and into today, hundreds of volunteers, from ex-military to local civilians, as well as state and federal teams, joined the effort.
Seeing all the devastation and the trees and the clothing, the random bits of flotsam floating around the river really hits home. So that gives quite a somber feeling to just be out here seeing it in person rather than just on the news.
The floods tore through the Texas Hill Country on Friday the 4th. An overnight downpour caused the Guadalupe to rise a staggering 26 feet in a very short period. This time-lapse shows how suddenly the waters rose, swallowing a causeway in a matter of minutes.
If you had seen what July 3rd looked like, you would never guess that this was coming that night. Cars were floating away with the lights on. You could see the lights and you can hear honking. And there was like not one or two, but there were dozens of vehicles just floating away. And I was just, it was just too much.
This area is home to a number.
Only need like 4 inches of moving water to move cars. That's horrific, man. That's just. That.
Number of children's summer camps. For a century, girls have flocked to Camp Mystic on the banks of the river. Today, the camp confirmed 27 members of its tight-knit community were killed, mostly young campers, like 8-year-old Sarah Marsh, as well as Mystic's longtime director, Dick Eastland. He was reportedly swept away trying to rescue children. Other victims include 68-year-old Jane Ragsdale. She devoted her life to another nearby girls' camp, Heart of the Hills. The camp had been between sessions on Friday when the flood hit. And 62-year-old Tanya Berwick, whose car got caught in the torrent on her way to work. Her son said she had a heart of gold. And 27-year-old Julian Ryan was killed trying to escape his trailer home. His fiancée, mother, and 6-year-old son survived. Questions are swirling about preparedness and why more urgent flooding alerts didn't come sooner. The flood-prone Kerr County had contemplated a warning system, complete with river gauges and sirens, for nearly a decade, but some local officials said costs have always gotten in the way. Others have blamed cuts made by the Trump administration.
Texas has enough money to put razor wire in the Rio Grande, but not enough money to protect its. That's disgusting.
To the National Weather Service.
Texas is grieving right now.
Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz, whose own kids have gone to camp.
Who could have seen this coming? Again, okay, I totally get it. It was in a riverbed. I think the bigger thing is it happened very fast. Like in a half hour for waters to rise, that is very fast. had proper funding and things been put in place, it could have been avoided. And more of these people could have been saved. But we also can't predict weather without weather services. So, like, money blinds people a lot. And a lot of these people probably have gone their entire life without seeing it. Again, it was almost 40 years ago since the last flood. The only person who would have seen it would have been the camp owner. He was in his, like, what? He said his 70s and 80s? So, I don't know. And plus, like, you see it, like, so dried up. And I know, it's called, like, Flash Flood Alley. I get it. I'm just saying, like, cut them a little bit of slack. Like, cut the regular people a little bit of slack.
In the area rejected that.
Because they don't know these things weren't put in place. They're just now finding out that how their state failed them. So, like, I don't hold this against people who were down there camping on a weekend that they didn't know there was going to be rain, and then rain suddenly came. Because we were just watching the weather with Ryan Hall, y'all, the day before. And he talked about some rain and some chances of flash flooding, but he moved on more to the temperatures where it was going to be like 120 this. So, like, I don't know, just give a little slack. I get it. We built our house on a volcano. How did we not know the volcano was going to erupt? But, like, who have lived there for 30 years didn't know this happened.
That allegation, noting that the National Weather Service had issued warnings in advance of the floods.
After we come through search and rescue, after we come through the process,
Ted Cruz should know that it was coming. He should have foreseen this.
Of rebuilding, there will naturally be a period of retrospection where you look back and say, okay, what exactly transpired? What was the timeline? And what could have been done differently to prevent this loss of life?
President Trump said he'll likely visit the flood zone on Friday. And forecasters say even more rain is on its way to central Texas this week. With dozens still missing, officials fear the death toll is almost certain to rise. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham.
For more on the latest in Texas, we're joined by Tony Plohetsky with the Austin American-Statesman and KVUE. He's been covering this disaster. Tony, welcome back, and thanks for joining us. As you heard in Williams' reporting, some of the biggest questions remain the accuracy of the forecasts and the effectiveness of a warning system, why more people weren't evacuated sooner. What kind of answers are you getting from officials on those?
With regard to the warnings, there's apparently something of a divide, even between the meteorological community, about whether or not the forecast adequately prepared the public.
Wait a minute. We have entire movies based off of the fact that weathermen are not right about the weather at all, ever. I don't understand how you can say, like, we needed to know more about the weather as the weather was happening when the shit that does the weather has been taken away or never even implemented in the first place, like with the river level sensors and sirens and things like that.
The public once this emergency began unfolding. Some meteorologists say that the warnings and the watches that were in place did not adequately inform the public that flash flooding to this extent was possible. Yet at the same time, others point to the fact that a flash flood watch was posted well in advance of this flooding event, and that several hours before the Guadalupe River began to rise and overflow its banks, that there was in fact a flash.
When the flash flood warning initially came out, I'm sure it's possible to say that people should have listened or taken it more seriously. But as someone who got a tornado warning recently and took it very seriously, but was told not to take it seriously, I think we should listen to those alerts. Even if we're wrong, it's okay. I'd rather be wrong and sit in the basement for a few hours than potentially be hurled into the sky by a tornado.
Flash flood warning. They say that should have and could have adequately notified the public that they needed to get to higher ground urgently.
I know you're going to continue to cover those questions in the days and weeks ahead. In the meantime, I know you've also been reporting on some of the deaths of people lost local to your area in and around Austin. That includes 2 little girls named Linny and Mary, who were both killed, both 8 years old, both campers at Camp Mystic. What can you tell us about them and their families right now?
And this camp drew families from all over the state of Texas. Dallas, Houston, many Austin families sent their children
it
for
is sad.
generations, multiple generations, to
I'm wondering
Camp
if
Mystic.
Dart's okay.
Outside my window right now, I look and I see a big green.
This is gonna traumatize a generation. Everything that's happening right now is traumatizing generations.
Bow that is tied around an oak tree. So many families.
But no, there are people who are going, yeah, but it directly happened to them. Yeah, no, exactly. No, you're correct. It does matter, and it is trauma that is valid. I'm just saying, it's a lot. Everybody's going to collectively have trauma together over a lot of different things currently. That's all. Not trying to invalidate anybody's trauma. But no, you're absolutely correct. Especially, like, people are going to have fears of moving water. People are going to have nightmares. They're going to have, you know, various forms of PTSD. People are going to be constantly trying to rebuild. You know, it's not just the camp that got swept away. It's also houses, livelihood got swept away. And so it is not just, it's going to be as bad or worse, like what happened in Asheville, North Carolina with Hurricane Maria or Helen over last summer, because a lot of people are still trying to build and get their lives together, and FEMA is gone for them. So, you know, you live in a place where you don't think that's going to happen, especially with how hot it's getting. People also don't realize that sometimes when it's its hottest, the ground's not going to absorb so much of that water, or only going to absorb that water, and then it's just gonna go, man. But it is really sad, and none of these people deserve this at all, regardless of who they voted for. Yeah, dry ground gets hydrophobic. Yeah, exactly. And that was a big issue with the hurricane that we saw in Asheville, is that a lot of that soil, we were in a drought. A lot of the Northeast had been in a drought for months and months. And then all of a sudden, it's just a downpour, and none of it could get absorbed fast enough. And then, like, trees and houses and boulders just came crashing down mountains, and like whole towns swept down a river. And like, it's absolutely
in the city of Austin and across the state of Texas has had such close bonds to the camp and the people who participated in this camp. Those little girls whose families I have been in contact with are among the two of the children who perished in this flash flood event. And as you can imagine, the grief is just running throughout this entire community and throughout the state of Texas this evening.
There's another piece of this that we're picking up on here, Tony, that for all the focus on the camp, it's shown a light on how important camp culture is in the Texas Hill Country. As you mentioned, it's a community in and of itself.
I think camp culture should be very important, period, but I think camps are too expensive to send kids to anymore. Or like families just don't have the budget, because like my partner went to a summer camp, and the way he talks about it, he loves it. And I would love our kids to be able to go to that, but I don't know if that's like, you know, possible to afford something like that. But I think camp culture needs to find a way back here. Camping is fun. Going out in the woods into the middle of nowhere, going swimming in a river, you know, catching some fish, catching bugs, catching frogs, whatever you want to do, catching snakes, catching armadillos. Like, that's fun. And it's a good way to get your hands dirty in nature.
Closely bound together, and how devastating the loss has been because of that culture. What should we understand about that?
So, Amna, the Texas Hill Country is one of the most cherished parts of the state of Texas. And it is aptly named because it has rolling hills, waterways, anchored in many ways by the Guadalupe River. And across time, different camps have sprung up along the river and also along the lakes that are in the Texas Hill Country as well. So there is a deep culture, a deep love of the camping experience among many families who send their children to those camps. And I think that the fact that that culture is so strong, that love of the experience is so strong, I think that also is just deepening the tragedy among these close-knit families, literally thousands of them across the state.
That is Tony Plahetsky of the Austin American-Statesman joining us.
So sad. All right, we're moving on to our next topic. I do want to get away from the floods. I know it's going to keep popping up. Apparently, the government investigated itself and found no wrongdoing. The Epstein files dropped, and it turns out Epstein was not murdered. He unalived himself, suicided himself, and there was no client list. I cannot make this shit up. Maybe I should do a refresher. Jay Aubrey. So, if you guys don't know who Jay Aubrey is, I highly recommend them. They are a YouTube channel that specializes in multi-hour long deep dives into people and topics. I really enjoyed it. The Jerry Springer one was really good. I watched it twice. The Vince McMahon one was informative, but I knew most of it already, but a lot of it was fucking disgusting. Tyler Oliveira was good. I watched that twice. A lot of these were really, really good. The Matt Gaetz one was, but he has a video series on Jeffrey Epstein. And it's an hour and 19 minutes. See how far we get through.
A judge has ordered the release of the identities of dozens of people mentioned in the court document.
This is Jay Aubrey. He posted this a year ago. This is gonna be backtracking. This is gonna be us, going over what we knew and how the information is being presented to us now and breaking that down using our own opinion.
Related to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
The papers could reveal more than 150 people who were associated with Epstein.
Epstein was an operator. Even if you take the absolute minimalist view of what Epstein...
The other thing I want to say is Jawbry makes all of the music for these videos. So please keep that in mind because they are bangers.
Could have been up to. I mean, he was a crook through and through.
How many other people has this happened to? How many other stories are sitting in a vault, in an ABC News or an NBC News vault, of powerful people that they wanted to preserve their relationship with?
On the morning of December 5th, 2010, Woody Allen was photographed here with his wife and stepdaughter, leaving the Upper East Side mansion of New York financier and at that point, recently convicted pedophile Jeffrey Edward Epstein. Over a decade ago, I doubt the average American had even heard the name Jeffrey Epstein. Yet, the 57-year-old had just gotten off house arrest for soliciting a minor for prostitution.
I didn't know who Jeffrey Epstein was until he was arrested.
and registered as a sex offender only 3 months prior to the big celebration he was throwing for the Duke of York, and then fourth in line to the throne, Prince Andrew, as journalist Alexandra Wolf reported all the way back in 2011. While several of his guests that day, which included the ABC anchor George Stephanopoulos, CBS personalities Katie Couric and Charlie Rose, and comedian Chelsea Handler, have all expressed regret for not doing more research into their host, except for Charlie Rose, who was actually pretty close to Epstein and would even meet girls through him. All of these people were convening.
No client list. Every time somebody mentions that there was a client of Epstein, I'm going to point out that Trump says there's no. Take a bong hit every time I say there's.
That day in a $77 million mansion that would later be dubbed a House of Depravity by Epstein's victims. Physicist Lawrence Krauss, despite knowing exactly why Epstein had spent time in jail, told the Daily Beast in 2011, "I do not feel tarnished in any way by my relationship with Jeffrey. I feel raised by it." Everyone and their dog is now aware that Jeffrey Epstein had connections in the highest of high places, but the specific nature of those connections has always largely been shrouded in mystery, and that may be by design. These connections include, but of course are not limited to, well-respected scientists, scholars.
No client list. Hold on, I haven't finished packing. I won't say it for every type of person they name in this segment, but I will say it. I will say it for this small section.
Actors, lawyers, real estate moguls, US presidents, and international leaders from all around the globe. While Prince Andrew's now infamous camaraderie with Epstein made quite the splash in British media 10 years ago,
Prince Andrew's ex-wife was given £15,000 by his American friend Jeffrey Epstein to pay off some of her debts. That friend, a convicted sex offender.
The American press stayed unusually quiet back then. This Daily Beast article was one exception, but even Wolf herself asks in it why nobody, particularly New York socialites, seemed to know or even care about what Epstein had just admitted to doing in Palm Beach. Remember, this dinner party happened 3 years after Epstein very publicly pled guilty to procuring a minor for sex, and 8 years before he would be arrested again on federal charges of human trafficking, then die under mysterious circumstances that remain the subject of intense debate today, even becoming somewhat of a running joke.
Thank you so much, James.
Yep. And remember, Epstein didn't kill himself.
Okay, got it.
There's a lot of jokes in my lifetime that have become very true over the years, and have also helped break down like people's opinion, I guess. Okay, so the joke I'm gonna reference is jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams. Now that is in reference to how people believe that the jet fuel was not hot enough to, or burns at a hot enough temperature to melt the steel beams of the World Trade Center, causing them to collapse in on themselves. That being said, a lot of people heard that and went, haha, that's funny, and then used that joke as like a way to start the jump off of maybe I don't support 9/11, and then the joke Bush did 9/11 started happening all the time. And so you know, if you, once you put, you know, jet fuel don't melt steel beams and Bush did 9/11 in a joke together, people will start questioning things, and everybody like knows that like jokes are the best way to convince people, right? Making people laugh is the best way to get them to remember something or to get them to your side. Good. Okay, that balances out much better. But I do think people saying like Epstein didn't kill himself really did help like cement it into the American like zeitgeist that maybe he didn't kill himself and maybe there is a conspiracy to protect his client list. And now that's only going to get worse with I'm gonna leave it off. It's only going to get worse with the fact that they're saying there is no client list. Don't take a hit for that one.
Very clever.
And now, with a judge recently ordering thousands of past court documents to be unsealed, Epstein and friends are back under the spotlight of public scrutiny once again. With all the pop bass, pop crave, poo crave Twitter accounts teasing the news like it was a new Travis Scott album or something.
Over 150 names linked to Epstein will be unsealed in January per the orders of a federal judge. The Epstein documents have been released. About 300 pages of Epstein documents have been unsealed. Woo!
For a while, you could even place bets on which celebrities might be exposed as an Epstein client.
Did you see Bet Online is letting people bet money on who will be on the Epstein list? I'm doing that right now. Wait, what? An official betting pool for it? Harvey Weinstein, easy slam dunk. Hillary, probably. Joe Biden, I think he's probably too old. Like, I don't even think he knows what planes are right now.
Which is a long way of...
I forgot to put, hold on, I gotta put a note. All right. X. Call this IT. Okay. But I say every time we get this, every time I get there I can fly, never my heart beat low. I want you, I need my love. I need you in my life.
I drink and I know things.
I don't have water.
Would like you to drink something.
I said that. I don't have water. Why is my keyboard not working? I hear excuse and not hydrated. All right, I'll go inside and get some hydration. Christ. But I have to stay here for the hits. The hits I keep serving you. Never mind. Agua is important. It is, it is. Okay. Well, here you go. You guys did this yourself. Touch. I'll be back with more water when this song is done. No, we're doing the music video. We're not doing... Oh, it is the official video.
I still hear your voice when you sleep next to me. I still feel your touch in my dream. Forgive me my weakness, but I don't know why. to survive. 'Cause every time we touch, I get this feeling, and every time we kiss, I swear I could fly. Can't you feel my heart beat fast? I want this to last. Need you by my side. 'Cause every time we touch, I feel the static, and every time we kiss, I reach for the sky. Can't you hear my heart beat so?
time I'm with you, I lose my mind because I'm bending over backwards to relate. It's one thing to complain, but when you're driving me insane, well then I think it's time that we took a break. Maybe we're just trying.
I left my cup in here, so I had to get another one. I even got halfway, realized I forgot my cup, turned around, came back, grabbed my phone, walked back. So, the ADHD was painful, man. I literally halfway back into the house, I was like, oh, I forgot my cup. Turned around, came back in here, grabbed my cell phone that I don't need for the walk in between at all. And then inside, did everything, and I was like, oh no. Like, I started to head back out. I was like, oh, I gotta refill my water. And I was like, oh no.
Christ, there's a boomer around here.
It was so painful. So I got a new cup. And yes, it's a jar. We've been turning all of our glass jars into cups. Because it's really big things. And it's good for storage. And my coffee in it. Because if you make the coffee hot and you pour it in there, it when you put it in the fridge. So, a couple days worth of coffee. Or tea. You could do tea the same way. You know? No judgment whether it's tea or coffee. But anyway, I believe I owe a hit. I owe some water. Drinking it now, though. All right. Back to the deep dive. Back to the client list. I mean, the not client list. Don't take a hit for that one.
Saying that despite the man himself being long gone, the Epstein saga is anything but over. This story has fascinated and frustrated me for as long as I've been paying attention to it. And the more you dig in, the more questions seem to crop up. It's a complex tale, often mired in conspiracy and littered with political interests.
Bill Clinton.
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems.
My brother in Christ, you were on the plane! This video not only attempts to outline the years-long behavior Epstein and company were said—
Trump bought his plane. I don't know if Jeffrey's timeline goes to that, but since Trump— no, because this is from a year ago. Trump bought Epstein's plane. Oh wait, maybe that was during the campaign and not after the after he took office.
To participate in. It's also about shedding light on what we still don't know, and what we may very well never know. We won't get to everything today, since this is only one part of what will eventually be a 3-part series, but I hope it can at least be a starting point for those not as privy to the timeline of the late trafficker's reign of terror, and those who maintained correspondence with the man even after his guilt became abundantly clear. Everyone now knows the name Jeffrey Epstein, but the question I intend on answering is how it all came to this.
Tonight, more newly unsealed court documents just released involving accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein.
Tonight, the blast radius from Jeffrey Epstein's reach continues to grow.
The accuser in the case did claim that she met the former president on Epstein's private island.
Jeffrey Epstein's mansion was a hive of activity today amid uproar over his suicide behind bars.
Jeffrey Epstein victims recounted in sworn depositions about the many powerful and famous men they met in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit.
I don't know what to make out of these documents. I don't know how these were compiled. I have nothing to do with that. You know, that's not my business. What I'm concerned about is my brother's murder.
Yeah, I'm talking about Jeff Epstein, the New York financier.
Yes! We're talking about the same Jeff Epstein.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I never heard.
Oh, it was a big story in the news. Huge.
Jeff Epstein.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure, with respect, if there was some news about Jeff Epstein, I would have heard.
But let's just pause for a moment here and allow today's sponsor, Ground News, to help us understand how Jeffrey Epstein, Jimmy Kimmel, and my mortal enemy as a Cowboys fan, Aaron Rodgers, all wound up in the same sentence recently. See, the Ground News app and website gather related news articles from around the world and provide context about the source of the information for a more accurate understanding of current events. So when Aaron Rodgers suggested Jimmy Kimmel was associated with Epstein on Pat McAfee's show, you can imagine how the internet responded. But with Ground News, I can see that out of 150 articles, the majority of the coverage has come from either left or center-leaning publications. I can see all the ways the media chose to frame the
Has anybody actually used Ground News? Good. Enjoy it.
controversy. Scripts highlighting Jimmy's response, setting the record straight that he's never been in contact with Epstein, while Breitbart's preview mentioned how upset Aaron got for the way the media, including ESPN, tried to cancel him instead of focusing on the real criminal. But The Hill showed me a quote from Aaron saying he understands why Jimmy got so upset he threatened to sue, but he's also not stupid enough to seriously make a claim like that with zero evidence. Seeing these different angles on the same story in one place with clear markers highlighting a source's political leaning, reliability, and ownership, so I'm aware of any bias that could be affecting its reporting, is one of the most interesting features of ground news. I feel like I can truly trust my perception of the world because I'm not getting my news from just one potentially biased source. So check it out for yourself by going to ground.news/Jobbery right now. You can even get 30% off the Vantage plan if you subscribe through my link, which is what I use, or try it for less than $1 this month. Huge thanks again to the wonderful people at Ground News for sponsoring this video and helping us all see through misinformation and media bias.
I saw lots of people doing lots of hard work, and hard work didn't translate into success either. It wasn't what you do or how hard you work.
Hey! Oh, did you text me? I don't have anything on my yet.
Lots of it, in fact, turns out to be not necessarily who you meet.
Drop my phone.
Who you came in contact with.
One of the most robust biographies of Jeffrey Epstein we have was written by his own legal defense team following his initial indictment in Palm Beach, handed over to state prosecutors in 2007 by one of Epstein's lawyers, who also made sure to attach a smug, handwritten note that read, "Enjoy some fun reading on your defendant." Obtained in 2019 by the Palm Beach Post, the generous wording of this thing should be entirely expected. I mean, it was written by his defense team after all. It glowingly recounts all the times Epstein lent a helping hand to the people around him, and includes testimonies of former girlfriends Eva Anderson and Ghislaine Maxwell. Being sure to mention that the reason Epstein has shied away from becoming a parent is because the demands of his business would not allow him the kind of time and presence needed to be a good parent. I'm sure that's what it is. To back up a little here, it also notes that Epstein was born in Coney Island, Brooklyn, New York in January 1953. Jeffrey and his younger brother Mark were raised in a middle-class environment by their two parents, Pauline, a school aide, and Seymour, a groundskeeper for the city of New York. It's always mentioned that he liked to play the piano and that he did so well academically that he was able to graduate Lafayette High School 2 years early when he was just 16, before going on to study math and physics at the Cooper Union for a few years. Epstein never graduated, but he did transfer to NYU, where he would also not graduate. So the natural question becomes, how did a two-time college dropout get a job teaching math at the prestigious Dalton School the same year he left NYU behind? After all, the Dalton schools produced a number of notable alumni, including Chevy Chase, Anderson Cooper, Sean Ono Lennon, and specifically while Epstein was there, Prudence Murdoch, daughter of Fox News founder Rupert Murdoch, and actress Jennifer Grey, according to NPR. The New York Times reports that the school's headmaster at the time Epstein was hired was Donald Barr, who, fun fact, is the father of William Barr, the U.S. Attorney General under Trump, who you may know for being in charge of the DOJ when Epstein died in custody decades later, which is just one of the many strange tidbits we'll see throughout this.
Everything is so connected. This is so wild.
Story, like the fact that Donald Barr once wrote a book called Space Relations, about a planet ruled by oligarchs who engage in child sex slavery. So I'm glad that's something I know, and now so do you. As former Dalton social studies teacher Susan Semel told The Times, Barr was explicitly looking to hire teachers with less conventional backgrounds in the field. And while Epstein was about as unconventional as it got, he was barely 21 years old, had no experience in the world of education. I mean, he's a two-time dropout and would show up to school wearing fur coats and gold chains that would dangle in front of his grossly exposed hairy chest. I'm sorry for the mental image, but I think it's worth illustrating here in detail. His tenure at Dalton, though, wouldn't last long, according to the interim headmaster, who alluded to Epstein's lack of effectiveness. If you ask his students what they thought about the eccentric instructor, the consensus seems to vary. Some described him as caring and attentive, while others recall a clear inappropriateness about the way he conducted himself. It's also been reported that he'd attend student parties where underage drinking would occur, to the point that it would become widely talked about among the school. Epstein's bizarre behavior even made it all the way up to the headmaster that replaced Barr, Gardner Dunnan, whose attorney has since told The Times he denies being aware of any concerns of Epstein's conduct. It's also worth noting that Dunham himself was later accused of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old. Epstein may have been out at Dalton, but he sure wasn't down on his luck.
Everyone in this is disgusting. Oh God, and we're only in the first 12
Struggling
minutes.
to find his next gig either. Ever since the beginning, one of his few talents may have been his ability to suck up to the gaggle of powerful people in his vicinity. Robert Couturier, an interior designer who knew Epstein during the 80s, told Vanity Fair in 2021 that Epstein was a flatterer, with a woman named Leon Koppel telling the Miami Herald to give Jeff credit. He knew how to woo people, how to schmooze, and she would know her father Ace Greenberg is the one who gave Epstein a job at Bear Stearns, a now failed investment bank on Wall Street. Greenberg, Bear Stearns' chairman, who was reportedly introduced to Epstein through Dalton, was clearly fascinated in the young teacher and saw great potential for him in the economic world despite his lack of experience in, well, anything that wasn't sniffing the farts of the most powerful people in the room. Something I find odd is that Epstein miraculously kept finding himself in these highly desirable job positions when he was less than qualified to fulfill them. He was a lackluster candidate at best, yet he was still, for some reason, being paid by billionaires like Leon Black extraordinarily well, better than most money managers would have been getting paid, in fact. Begging the question, what exactly made Epstein so uniquely appealing to these people? I mean, they could have hired anyone in the world to do a better job for a way lower rate. It doesn't make sense. But Black and Greenberg weren't the only fans of the underqualified 20-something. Even the future CEO of Bear Stearns, James Kane, was happy to take Epstein under his wing.
That guy looks like if Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell had a baby.
Even the future.
Look at that. Tell me that doesn't look like if you tries. I don't even think. How dare you put that mental image in my head? Tell me I'm wrong though. Like he's almost got the same neck. He's got like Lindsey Graham's like forehead. Jail.
Brother, this guy stinks!
Dorfidoodle just redeemed timeout Blue. Jail.
Blue's going to timeout because of Dorfy. Blue's streaming right now though, and I don't have any mods in chat, so I guess Blue's. Wait, did he comment earlier? Did he come in and get first? He did. Here, I'll go all the way back. And timeout Blue. 10 minutes. Nice job, Dorfy. That's what that button does. I can't wait till he gets this as a notification on his end. In the middle of his stream.
CEO of Bear Stearns, James Kane, was happy to take Epstein under his wing during his time at the firm, as Time magazine reported that Epstein worked his way up from a lowly junior assistant to a floor trader before becoming a limited partner in 1980. The same year, Cosmopolitan crowned him Bachelor of the Month, with this little magazine snippet that claimed the 27-year-old talks only to people who make over $1 million a year. If you're a cute Texas girl, write this New York dynamo at 55 Water Street. All I can hope now is that no Texas girl actually did that. He left the next year to start his
maybe they did and he trafficked them.
His own thing, but continued trading with Bear Stearns until their collapse in 2008. Around the time Epstein was experiencing somewhat of a collapse of his own, but don't worry, he'd still have plenty of ways to move massive hordes of money around all the way up until his death. But let's just put all of that to the side for a second. First, talk about one of Epstein's more lucrative connections he made up until this point. A peculiar little character by the name of Les Wexner, whose real-time net worth hovers around a humble $6 billion, is the 86-year-old founder of a global retailing empire empire. Launching the clothing company The Limited all the way back in 1963, Wexner went on to make a series of business acquisitions that allowed his influence to expand exponentially over the following decades. He acquired Victoria's Secret in 1982, Abercrombie & Fitch in 1988, Bath & Body Works in 1990, and by 2003, Fortune magazine considered Limited Brands the most admired specialty retailer in the world. And at that point in time, Wexner's financial manager was none other than Jeffrey Epstein.
His ties to Columbus native Wexner have been brought into the national spotlight.
Oh my God.
The genesis of Epstein and Wexner's decades-long close friendship is somewhat of a debate due in part to how murky Epstein's life became after leaving Bear Stearns, but also thanks to Epstein's conflicting answers as to which year the two buddies officially met. First bragging about the investment advice he gave to Wexner in 1986, only to seemingly backtrack and say he didn't begin advising him until 1989, actually. Regardless, Wexner didn't shy away from describing to Vanity Fair just how close the two were, calling Epstein very smart with a combination of excellent judgment and unusually high standards. Whatever that means. But then again, this was his, quote, most loyal friend, at least in 2003. And I know you may be wondering, hey, this was years before Jeffrey Epstein got publicly exposed as a serial sex trafficker, so is it really that fair to criticize the guy if he didn't know Epstein was bad until at least 2008? And I might agree with that, if Wexner hadn't been so personally involved with the man to the point where Epstein reportedly told a friend that Wexner knows everything about me. He knows every experience I've had. With Vanity Fair also noting that Wexner was warned hundreds of times by Robert Meister, who originally introduced the two men, to drop Epstein after learning about his sexual proclivities before 2008. But it wasn't just Meister.
I'm just like waiting to pounce on the next There's No Client list.
Sounding the alarm bells. Harold Levin and Jerry Merritt, who both worked for Wexner, told Vanity Fair they too warned their boss of Epstein's shadiness. Yet despite it all, to this day, Wexner denies knowing anything about his former best friend's criminal behavior, telling employees he was never aware of the illegal activity and would never have guessed that a person I employed more than a decade ago could have caused such pain to so many people, even though he would have known exactly that. In fact, I find it basically impossible for Wexner to not know that his, quote, most loyal friend had been going around and lying to women about his relationship with Victoria's Secret by falsely labeling himself a modeling recruiter, according to one police report, which also included the claim that Epstein had groped model Alicia Arden in 1997. And that's not to mention when a year prior, an artist named Maria Farmer reached out to authorities claiming Epstein had assaulted her while working on Wexner's Ohio property. She filed a police report, but somehow Wexner never caught wind of any of that, I guess, and didn't cut ties until 18 months after charges were brought against Epstein in Palm Beach. In fact, Epstein not only remained Wexner's power of attorney for almost 2 decades, he also served as a trustee on the board of the Wexner Foundation, oversaw the construction of his super yacht, and even drafted a prenup for Wexner and his wife. And if that wasn't enough, Wexner would reportedly sell Epstein a Boeing 727 for $10 million in 2000, and also allow Epstein—
oh my God, that's the plane that Trump bought. That's the plane that Trump bought.
to take possession of his multi-million-dollar Upper East Side mansion for the low price of free, which is a long way of saying that there's a special place in the afterlife for Mr. Wexner. While we're on the subject, one of the greatest mysteries surrounding Jeffrey Epstein to this day is where he acquired the massive fortune he used to bankroll his decades of international criminal activity. He's usually referred to in the news as a billionaire, but we really don't know how much money he exactly had at his peak. Prosecutors in 2019 estimated he had a net worth of at least $500 million, but the fact that we have no definitive explanation for where any of that really came from should infuriate everyone watching this. Now, Wexner is commonly speculated to at least be in part responsible for the digits in Epstein's bank account. After all, he did claim Epstein misappropriated vast sums of money from him and his family only after his, quote, most loyal friend's arrest, of course. But even if Epstein ripped off one of Wexner's charities for a quick and easy $46 million, that would barely account for the rest of his gargantuan wealth. So naturally, people are kind of forced to just guess. Some of the current active conflicting theories have to do with blackmail, which we will explore in part 2, money laundering, and his possible connection to one of the largest Ponzi schemes in American history. There's a little gap in the resume we've discussed so far. After working for Bear Stearns and before becoming Les Wexner's appointed hatchet man, Epstein began his own consulting firm, working as a bounty hunter in his own words to help clients recover stolen money, which further brought him into contact with some very rich individuals, claiming he wouldn't do business with anyone not a billionaire, even brushing elbows with members of international governments, as Vanity Fair wrote in that 2003 article. Maybe this is why law enforcement discovered a mysterious passport after a raid on his home in 2019, which exhibited Epstein's image next to a fake name and a noted place of residence in Saudi Arabia. I promise we'll get to the Ponzi scheme thing in a second. Okay, we're almost there. His lawyers at the time said he needed this fake ID for protection as a Jewish person traveling regularly to the Middle East. Why was he going to the Middle East, you ask? Well, one of Epstein's clients at this time was identified by journalist Vicky Ward.
No client list. Remember, no client list. There was none whatsoever, according to Pam Bondi and Kash Patel.
As Adnan Khashoggi, who, among other things, was a middleman in the Iran-Contra scandal who helped smuggle cash for the Marcos family out of the Philippines. During his travels overseas is where Epstein was reportedly introduced by alleged arms dealer Douglas Leese, known for his involvement in a multi-billion-dollar weapons deal between Saudi Arabia and the United Kingdom, to American businessman and future convicted fraudster Stephen Hoffenberg. Hoffenberg, over the next several decades, would spend 18 years behind bars for his involvement in a $475 million financial scheme that he now says Epstein masterminded. Okay, see, I told you we'd get to the Ponzi scheme thing eventually. It just took a minute, but thanks for sticking by. Hoffenberg told NPR in 2019 that he considered Epstein to be brilliant, extraordinarily gifted, and
Everybody finds Epstein so smart. Part of me wonders if he was just like a really charismatic person and he made people think he was smart, you know? Like, I wonder if, okay, so writer. I don't think. Okay. I think he just tricked everybody. That's my vibe.
Talented in convincing people to buy from him. And also he was a criminal mastermind, by the way. The criminal enterprise that Hoffenberg is describing rather openly here went by the pretty uncreative name of Towers Financial. Hoffenberg and his self-described best friend, Epstein, who worked as a paid consultant through the 80s and 90s, ran a team of people on Wall Street, investment people that raised these $1 billion illegally, as Hoffenberg told CBS News, feeling the need to emphasize he was my guy, my wingman, which is personally not a term I would use to describe Jeffrey Epstein in any circumstance, but over the course of 5 years, prosecutors allege the company raised 9 figures, almost $500 million of investors' money by selling them fake bonds. They'd then use the money to repay earlier investors while pocketing the difference. A classic Ponzi that you may be shocked to hear lasted as long as it did, but keep in mind, this was a pre-Bernie Madoff era, so a financial fraud of this scale was almost unheard of in the early 90s. The strangest part of it all, however, is that despite multiple parties being so able to recall Epstein as a prominent component of the Ponzi scheme, Epstein himself was never charged alongside his buddy Stephen Hoffenberg, who pled guilty to 5 criminal charges in 1995. As Terrence Corrigan, a lawyer representing over 2,800 people defrauded by Towers, told CBS, as I understood, Epstein was sort of a senior VP. If he was not the number 2 guy, he was certainly the number 2 or number 3 person at the firm. I know we saw organization charts, and yes, Epstein's name was on them, with another attorney, one representing.
He was number 1. Mitty McSmitterson.
Towers Financial, reinforcing Corrigan's memory. Epstein was a consultant at Towers Financial. I met him there and I drafted a consulting agreement as I was an attorney at the company. I remember him. Epstein was even mentioned in a lawsuit against the company filed by the Illinois Department of Insurance, who, now you're probably wondering, why was Illinois involved? Well, they claimed Towers had carried out an illegal transfer that violated Illinois law. As you can see here, Epstein's name appears in their documents multiple times, yet for whatever reason, Epstein never once appeared as a defendant in the 1993 federal case against Hoffenberg. Although Hoffenberg's testimony to the grand jury included mention of Epstein being the mastermind behind the whole thing, as reported by Julie K. Brown.
Who does number 2 work for? Austin Powers was ahead of his time, and that's really funny because he was frozen in time. Well, he was frozen and then defrozen, or was it? He was frozen, right?
Brown, Epstein was nonetheless dropped from the case for reasons that are still unknown today. While Hoffenberg was awaiting a jail sentence, Epstein was busy frolicking around the White House and schmoozing power brokers at dinners and events like the White House Historical Association fundraiser in 1993, which included such beautiful guests as Clark Clifford, a man responsible for establishing BCCI in the United States. BCCI, which we definitely don't have enough time to dive into here, was an international bank used to transfer dark money between international governments later found to be involved in a litany of shady activity ranging from money laundering to illegal weapons sales to human trafficking. Clifford himself had charges brought against him that would be dropped not because prosecutors thought he was innocent all of a sudden, but because of Clifford's poor health the same year that he attended this fundraiser with Epstein. Frankly, the idea that a man accused of helping to facilitate one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in American history could avoid prosecution and immediately pal around with some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the country at an exclusive White House fundraiser is enough to turn anyone into a conspiracy theorist. Other than that 2003 Vanity Fair puff piece and a glowing profile in New York Magazine that we will get to in a bit, Epstein had lived much of his life in the shadows since the early 80s, making it all the more tricky for investigators and journalists to track his elusive movements. A lot of the insight we now know is thanks to Miami Herald journalist Julie K. Brown, who presents an extremely comprehensive timeline of events in her excellent book Perversion of Justice, which I read in preparation for this video and would recommend to anyone looking to learn more about the Epstein story. Brown, who has covered the story extensively for years now, writes that the earliest instances of Epstein's sex crimes against minors date back to the mid-90s, when, at a Michigan summer camp in 1994, he and his then-girlfriend Ghislaine approached a 13-year-old child. According to the Daily Mail article Brown cites here, the anonymous girl's mother says she looked even younger than she was. Then, years later, when Ghislaine's trial was underway in 2021, one of the lawyers representing the now convicted trafficker wrote this young victim's story off as the result of her own conduct, and that the girl had voluntarily or negligently assumed a known risk, consenting to the abuse. A 13-year-old. That is what lawyers representing Epstein and Ghislaine have consistently thought of the hundreds of girls who were systematically trafficked throughout their childhood. So just keep that in mind as we move forward here and discuss Epstein's track record of abuse across the United States. Some of it taking place in New York, some at his New Mexico baby farm, as he called it, and of course a lot of it occurring at the Palm Beach mansion he bought in 1990. To understand Epstein's years-long pattern of abuse, we have to establish the location of this 14,000 square foot monstrosity. Unfortunately, the neighborhood that housed Epstein's $44 million oceanfront property was only a short drive away from a much less privileged privileged area of Palm Beach, Florida. Testimony from even more victims prove he explicitly sought out girls from broken families, girls who were either homeless or on the verge of homelessness, those who came from tragic backgrounds wrought by addiction, suicide, and abuse already, girls who lived in trailer homes and were in and out of foster homes, girls who Epstein knew would not be taken seriously by the legal system. A prediction that his infamous plea agreement years later would ultimately prove right. And just a fair warning, a lot of this video from here on out will be discussing what victims experienced at the hands of Epstein and his associates. So if that's something you're unable to listen to, I completely understand, and just wanted to make it very clear before we get into any of the details. Throughout the mid-90s to the early noughts, Epstein would employ several tactics to prey on girls who primarily attended Palm Beach Gardens High School, Lake Worth Middle School, and Royal Palm Beach High, which the Palm Beach Post named Ground Zero in Epstein's operation. One of those girls was Michelle Licata, who was just 16 years old when she was approached by a friend at school in the days leading up to Christmas, 2004. Michelle, who recalled to ABC working at a supermarket and being strapped for cash at the time, was looking to earn some money in order to buy her family gifts for the holidays. According to her friend, all Michelle needed to do was massage an old guy and she'd get $200. This made Michelle curious, and because she was led to believe the massage would take place in a professional environment similar to the spas she had seen in the past, she obliged. It was only on the drive there that Michelle realized they weren't going to a professional facility. They were going to a house. And after finally arriving outside a sprawling mansion in a neighborhood she had never seen before, her friend hastily remarked that the man who lived inside might ask her to undress during the massage. Before she knew it, Michelle was whisked inside and led upstairs by several other women she had never met to a cold, dark bathroom where she was forced to encounter Jeffrey Epstein, lying face down on the massage table, talking on the phone. In that moment, Michelle was lost, confused, and left all alone with a man old enough to be her father. She then goes on to recount how Epstein molested her, noting that his face was enough to terrify her for the rest of her life. After the incident was over, Epstein paid her $200 and asked her to deliver another $100 bill to the friend who had brought her there. She got back in the car and told her friend what had happened, to which the friend responded, "Oh, that's okay. He tried to do that with my other friend too," as Michelle told Brown. Interestingly though, as Michelle told ABC, there were in fact other adults present at the estate. Gardeners, butlers, housekeepers, etc. It's just that they did nothing, as if they were used to seeing such girls come and go all the time. And as everyone knows now, that was the case. He did this frequently.
When Palm Beach police began interviewing teenagers in 2005, they were astonished at what dozens told them about Jeffrey Epstein.
Every girl that meets Jeffrey starts off with giving him a massage. The more you do with him, the more you make. Basically, if you take off your clothes, you're gonna make more. If you let him do things to you, you're gonna make more. I did it naked, but I wouldn't let him touch me or anything like that. So after that, he's like, you know what? He's like, listen, I'll pay you $200 for every girl that you bring to me.
She's like, oh, do you need to make any extra money? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, I can give you, like $200. It's this older guy in Palm Beach. He gets a lot of massages from girls. That was really, that's all she told me. He asked me to take my shirt off, so I took my shirt off, and that's how that was it.
Did you ever take your panties off and could be completely nude?
Every now and then, yeah.
It's like a train. It's like, I introduce them to all my friends, she'll bring her friends, and then will bring her friends. It goes on and on.
Having underage girls come to his house to abuse was like a constant need for him, which unfortunately drastically impacted the trajectory of these young girls' lives. One victim by the name of Carolyn, who was abused by Epstein starting in 2001, testified in court that she had become addicted to pain pills and cocaine in an effort to block out the abuse she endured at 14 years old. She claimed to have visited Epstein upwards of 100 times growing up, up, and that she was at his Palm Beach residence multiple times a week for years. Carolyn tragically passed away of a fentanyl and methadone overdose in October 2023. Although police were able to identify a little over 30 victims in 2015, Julie Kate Brown later discovered through her own research around 80 girls abused by Epstein just in Palm Beach alone. And those are only the ones we know about. Considering the wealth and the powerful connections Epstein would use as leverage over his young victims, it's no surprise that these girls were reluctant to speak with anyone about what had happened to them. Some, like Michelle, didn't even tell her parents until the police came knocking at her door a year later. Even now, there are victims who understandably don't want their identities out there. One anonymous woman in particular outlined these feelings to ABC in 2019. "I almost felt scared to talk. Like, was I going to get in trouble? Did I do something wrong that I could be arrested? I was young. I had blamed myself for all these years. I was definitely scared to talk." But that's not to say some girls hadn't been talking from the beginning.
Farmer says she reported the assault to the FBI, but she told us it wasn't for another decade, just before Epstein's first arrest in 2006, that an agent finally appeared at her door.
Remember Maria Farmer, who I mentioned earlier, how she told police that Epstein assaulted her in Ohio? Well, unfortunately, that wasn't a lone incident. That same year, her 16-year-old sister, Annie Farmer, was also abused by Epstein and his then-girlfriend Ghislaine at their New Mexico ranch, with Annie writing in her diary at the time of how weird it was that Epstein had rubbed her hand and lower leg at a movie theater, before later being instructed by Ghislaine Maxwell to give Epstein a foot massage, with Ghislaine later touching the 16-year-old inappropriately in front of Epstein. Epstein also got into bed with Annie at one point during the trip. Maria's experience in Ohio was similar, with the couple essentially trapping her in the house and groping her in unison, mirroring each other's movements, as the New York Times put it. Maria claimed in an affidavit that Les Wexner's security staff essentially kept her there against her wishes for 12 hours after the assault took place. It was at this point that Maria and Annie realized what had happened to one another and tried to take action. Both sisters reported their experiences first to police, then to FBI, who did nothing, prompting the sisters to instead speak with Vanity Fair journalist Vicky Ward on the record in 2002. Being tasked with writing the now infamous profile The Talented Mr. Epstein for the magazine, you would think that Ward would obviously publish the allegations and expose Epstein and Ghislaine once and for all. Only somehow that didn't happen. Sure, the article did briefly reference Epstein's affinity for, quote, mostly young girls, among a sea of other breathtaking quotes used to humanize the man, such as, quote, Epstein is charming, and, quote, many people comment there is something innocent, almost childlike about Jeffrey Epstein, making sure to hammer home the generous $25 million donation he had just made to Harvard for the creation of a mathematical biology and evolutionary
Fishing is paused. My Switch got signed into. Okay, just have to wait.
Dynamics program in Epstein's name. The article made zero mention of the allegations Ward had been told by the Farmer sisters. Since the release of this article, the blame for this little blunder has been pointed at numerous parties. Ward blames Vanity Fair's then editor-in-chief, Graydon Carter, for succumbing to Epstein's intimidation tactics and not including the allegations out of a combined lack of sympathy for the victims and that he actually believed Epstein's story over theirs. While Carter has referred to Ward as a serial liar, Isaac Chotiner offered an extensive analysis of the claims made on both sides in his article last year for The New Yorker. I would highly recommend checking it out in full, along with Ward's 2 responses, to get the full story of what happened, but it ultimately boils down to a massive he said, she said. It's true that Carter does have a reputation of repressing stories in the past, and seems pretty biased toward Epstein, according to transcripts released by Ward, but it should also be noted that Ward herself went on to write 2 more controversial pieces on Epstein, one in 2011 that praises Ghislaine pretty heavily, and another in 2008 where she describes Epstein as, quote, perfectly charming, as he has been to me for years now, telling him over the phone, well, I guess you and I have a history by now, huh, Jeffrey? To which he responded, you know how many girls say that to me? In fact, Maria Farmer herself alleges it was Vicky Ward who ratted to Ghislaine about the sisters going to the FBI.
Before all that, I was already in hiding because of Vanity Fair. Vicky Ward is, I'm going to tell you right now, she's a monster. She's a true monster. She's not a hero. We had to send a cease and desist letter because she's harassed my family for so long to try to save her face because she told Ghislaine Maxwell over drinks that I reported them to the FBI. Can you believe that?
Holy shit.
And so
Oh, sorry, I didn't
this
mean
was
to
in
swear.
2002.
But wow.
In 2000, no, please, I cursed my head off. She, for a year, promised us our safety for a whole year. And see, I didn't meet with Graydon. I met with Vicky. And so Vicky's the one that's responsible here because she was the person who promised us our safety. And she promised us that she would protect the story, right? Since then, she calls and threatens, I own your story. I can write your story. I mean, she's a real piece of work.
Those at Vanity Fair had a responsibility to do right by Epstein's accusers then and provide a voice for the voiceless in 2003. But because they didn't, Epstein was able to continue his pattern of amusing girls for years. One thing I can assure you, though, is that this wasn't the last time Epstein's accusers would be given the cold shoulder by the media. In 2019, shortly after Epstein's death, a leaked video would make the rounds online depicting ABC journalist Amy Robach expressing disdain for the network quashing an exclusive interview she conducted with Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre years before the sex trafficker was ever arrested on federal charges. On a hot mic, Amy can be seen here telling her off-screen producers during a commercial break that she had the story 3 years ago, and that the network offered a myriad of excuses as to why they wouldn't air Virginia's story back in 2015.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it
I
on the
remember
air.
this happened.
First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton. We had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, it was what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
A big factor here seemed to be Queen Elizabeth's son, Prince Andrew, whose name you likely associate with Jeffrey Epstein already. It's true that
I'm gonna pause it here for tonight. I am gonna skedoodle for the evening. I got some things to do.
About that time, eh, chaps?
So I will,
Righto.
especially because fishing's down. But I think Blue's still on, so let me switch to rating now. If I, hopefully, gotta remember to double chin. Follow. No, Blue's gone. Oh, and he's timed out, so even if he's watching, there's nothing that he can do. Alright, I'm just gonna get out of here then. Alright, bye everybody. You guys have a great night. I'll see you later.